another day, another Donovan Mitchell slap in the face, if you will. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this as a Jazz fan and as an NBA fan. Does Donovan Mitchell get the respect he deserves? I don't believe he does. And here's why I say that. I think Donovan Mitchell is a prototypical NBA star. Yes, if you want to call him undersized, great. He's long, he's explosive, he can really shoot the ball. I think, and this is my opinion, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments on this, I don't think Donovan Mitchell has even entered his prime yet. And I'm curious as to why Donovan Mitchell gets so much disrespect versus other players in this league. Is it because the Utah Jazz haven't won yet? That could be. Is it because Donovan Mitchell is a guy who faltered last year? Maybe that is. I don't know the answer to that question, Jake, but I think it's high time we start talking about Donovan Mitchell and having an open, honest discussion about whether or not he's respected, what's the right way to say it, accurately, at a level that he's deserved. Do you think Donovan Mitchell gets the respect he deserves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Donovan Mitchell definitely gets slighted in the respect category. I think that, part of it could be that he plays for the Utah Jazz. With all due respect, he's not playing for, a major market team, so that could be part of it. But I think that, Donovan Mitchell is in the same ilk as guys like Jason Tatum or Trae Young or any of these guys. And I think that what's so interesting to me is this offseason has worn on and the Rudy trade had happened and the Utah Jazz are doing things. Donovan Mitchell seemingly has always been the guy who's at the center of, he's leaving, and if Donovan doesn't want to be here, then he can get his ass out of here. And like the Utah Jazz fan base has had basically no patience with this process. And I think there's been a lot of vitriol for whatever reason for Donovan Mitchell. Now, we've had discussions in the past about whether Donovan Mitchell, was respected enough or like appreciated enough. And that upsets some of the Utah Jazz fans that listen to this show. But I have to say, like, from a national perspective and even locally, when you have members of the local media running out ridiculous CAA conspiracy theories about Donovan Mitchell and getting a certain head coach hired within the Utah Jazz organization, like, that tells me everything I need to know. Like, inherently, if you're doing that or if you're saying he's going to leave or whatever the story is that kind of paints Donovan Mitchell in a negative light, you don't respect him enough, because the fact is Donovan Mitchell has done nothing to suggest that he wants to leave. Donovan Mitchell has said nothing, done nothing. The only thing that he's done this offseason is spend time with his friends around the NBA. Someone named Emmanuel Quickley, who plays on the East Coast, happens to be Donovan Mitchell's one of his best friends in life. Yet people want to say, because he's a Knick or he's this guy or he's that guy, that then means that Donovan Mitchell's leaving the Utah Jazz because he's chilling in the Hamptons and posting pictures of himself getting off helicopters. Like, it's just such a ridiculous leap, and that's why we decided to talk about this today, because the fact is Donovan Mitchell is still here. The fact is, sources tell us that him and Ryan Smith talk every single day almost. They're in close communication. They like, there are things that I can't fathom why the Utah Jazz fan base and the national media won't just say, hey, this guy is an up-and-coming superstar, and he's not going anywhere. Why is that so hard?
Well, I think that's where really the genesis of this conversation started, was yesterday, where you have people that are saying, hey, Donovan Mitchell is this and Donovan Mitchell is that, and Brian Windhorst at ESPN had a rumor yesterday that Donovan Mitchell called the Jazz and was angry.
But that's precisely what I mean, a rumor. And we just run with that because it's Windhorst. And it bothers me. Like, if Windhorst said that about Kevin Durant, everybody would lose their mind. Oh my God, Kevin Durant is this and that, but he's Kevin Durant, so it's fine. But because it's Donovan Mitchell, we immediately go against him, and that's what I don't understand.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I struggle with so much is that there's just not that built-in respect that most NBA stars get. And I think that's part of the issue. And I don't think that has anything to do with it being Salt Lake City. Anybody that says that Donovan Mitchell doesn't get the run he would get in New York or Miami, you're crazy. Donovan Mitchell has been at the top of the national stack for a couple of weeks now. But this thing yesterday with Brian Windhorst, I think was a huge issue in that you have a guy in Donovan Mitchell that is the best player on the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
And a couple of narratives continue to get run out about Don and the Jazz that I just don't understand. This thing with Windhorst yesterday, where again, and if you didn't hear it, Brian Windhorst said that after the Rudy Gobert trade, his sources told him that Donovan Mitchell called the Jazz and had, pointed questions for them. There is no calling the Jazz for Donovan Mitchell. I was told yesterday, and I want to describe how this went down because I think this is a really important part of the conversation. I'm just sitting at my desk yesterday doing my thing, working, and I got a phone call from a blocked number, and that's pretty rare. But I'm out to a lot of dudes that would use a blocked number, so I answer it, and it's one of my guys at the Jazz. And frankly, he was a little fired up. And he's like, I just don't understand where this comes from. I don't understand how this happens. And we went on to have a conversation about how Donovan Mitchell and Ryan Smith have an ongoing relationship. They have an ongoing conversation. It's not like, oh, I haven't talked to Ryan in a month and he just traded Rudy. How dare he?
Oh, you mean like Kevin Durant hasn't talked to Nets ownership since the season ended or whatever? Like how that whole thing has happened? Which turned out
not to be true. Which, again, and I think that's a great example. Kevin Durant, as it turns out, was talking directly to Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, where people are like, oh, he's cut off communication, which at the end of the day turned out to be completely false.
Congratulations, but that's bullshit.
Yeah, and with the Jazz and Donovan Mitchell, I'm told that he and Ryan Smith have regular communication, that he has been told repeatedly, and if you go back and look at our tape, we've been saying this since early January, that he was told they're going to build this club around him. He was well aware that Rudy Gobert was being shopped and was going to be traded. Donovan Mitchell, this goes back to the Andy Larson CAA conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell was not shocked, dismayed, knocked off center.
The quote was unnerved.
Unnerved by, this is all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Donovan Mitchell is well aware of what this organization's doing. And by the way, if Donovan Mitchell and Ryan Smith were not talking about their direction of the club, that would be the story.
Yeah.
If Donovan Mitchell, your best player, who you supposedly have a great relationship, was not talking to your owner, that would be a huge problem. But you're trying to make a story out of, oh, hey, Donovan Mitchell talked to the Jazz about this trade, and why would he not?
Yeah.
Why would the Jazz want Donovan Mitchell to be silent? And the line that comes across yesterday that I will never forget that this particular person at the Jazz said to me was, Donovan Mitchell's opinion is valued here. Like they care what he thinks.
Yes.
They listen to what he says. So I don't understand why we continue to get this narrative that Don and the Jazz have some flawed relationship, or that there is consternation and anger and, Donovan is unsure about what's happening with Quinn Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's not. And the CAA conspiracy theory is exactly what I'm talking about. You have the beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. And again, Andy, with all due respect, I know it pisses you off. I talk about you. Repeatedly, people have DM'd me that you're upset with the things I've said about you. Here's the truth about what Andy Larson reported. The CAA conspiracy theory. And Andy reported that there's a big to-do behind the scenes when Quinn Snyder was fired. Andy reported that Donovan Mitchell is represented by CAA, that Adrian Wojnarowski, the ESPN NBA insider, is represented by CAA, and that Johnny Bryant, the assistant coach of the New York Knicks, is represented by CAA. Those are all facts, and they're not in dispute.
Right.
Okay, that's great until Andy Larson goes off the reservation and says, well, there's a conspiracy theory at work by Donovan's agent to get Johnny Bryant hired. So Donovan's agent and Donovan went to Adrian Wojnarowski and used him as a pawn to get the rumor out that Donovan is off-centered or uncomfortable or unnerved, thank you, by the firing of Quinn Snyder. And his conspiracy, Andy Larson's conspiracy theory is that Donovan and his agent went to Woj, who then went to the media with the story so that Johnny Bryant could get the job with the Utah Jazz.
So Donovan could have more control.
And yeah, exactly. And Donovan was going to manipulate the Jazz into hiring Johnny Bryant. And it was a complete fabrication. It was a lie. It was made up. It was not true. And at the end of the day, those of us that talked to people at the Jazz knew Will Hardy was their number one candidate. We told you that on June 6th.
Yeah.
We straight away said that. The day that Quinn was fired or resigned, however you want to put it, we told you, hey, watch out for Will Hardy and Charles Lee.
Yeah.
Those are two guys that I would be watching for, and go back and watch the show. I even said June 6th, Will Hardy's the guy that I would hire.
Yeah.
Because people at the Jazz, who, by the way, reached out to us.
Yeah.
We didn't reach out to them. They reached out to us last year. We have a channel there. But the issue is that the media wants to get their pitchforks out for Donovan Mitchell.
And I just don't understand it.
It makes no sense.
You know, and again, I'm not on some vendetta to talk about Andy all show, but he just with what's happened over the course of the season, he's just allowed me to do that. Like if you go back to the Mavs game, right, earlier in the year, like this past season, where Andy reported that Donovan was pissed off at the Dallas bench because they were picking him up 94 feet from the bucket, which is total BS. And then he goes and gets called out by Donovan. And I think that this kind of goes to this conversation where it's like Donovan Mitchell locally and nationally just does not get that inherent superstar respect. And what bothers me even more is that Brian Windhorst, Andy Larson, anybody in this town basically outside of Tony Jones, because I think Tony does the best job, honestly, and we've said that repeatedly, these guys that just want to talk about Don, they'll run their mouth, but then they'll sit in front of him in a press conference and won't ask him tough questions. They'll sit in front of Ryan Smith and won't ask the proper questions, and that's the problem I have. And I think that Donovan Mitchell should get an inherent level of trust. Hey, we're not going to assume you want to leave unless you come out and say, I asked for a trade. But you should get that.
But that again is another great example. Oh, Donovan's demanded a trade.
Says who?
When? Donovan Mitchell has not at any point, according to Utah Jazz sources, and frankly, a source very close to Donovan Mitchell, has never in the past or up till now, and as of last Friday, has never demanded a trade from the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
But yet you have rumors out there that say Donovan wants to leave. Donovan wants to go to the Heat. Donovan wants to go to the Knicks. Donovan wants to go here. Donovan wants to go there. And I don't understand this mentality of trying to force this guy out of Salt Lake City. I just don't get that. So, again, whether it's Andy Larson making up stories about Donovan, whether it is Brian Windhorst, and I can tell you straight away, when Brian Windhorst has sources, he is well connected in the NBA. I don't doubt that somebody told Brian Windhorst that. I have no doubt about that. Listening to Chris Mannix's podcast last night, as I am wanting to do every week.
Yeah. Great podcast.
A very good podcast. Chris Mannix at least says it's his opinion that Donovan Mitchell is going to be traded. And one of the other things I think we need to talk about today, and I see all your comments, and trust me, I'm coming, is this idea that Danny Ainge is operating on the 2022 Jazz the exact same way that he operated on the 2013 Boston Celtics. And I think we need to stop with this assumption. We have to stop with this assumption. The 2013 Celtics trade that sent Paul Pierce out is not remotely close to or even in comparison to trading Rudy Gobert or trading Donovan Mitchell. Paul Pierce in 2013 was at the end of the road. The guy had very little left to offer, as we then saw with Brooklyn and LA. Mm-hmm. He had very little left to offer. You're looking at a guy in Donovan Mitchell who has not even entered his prime yet, in my opinion. And we're going to compare him to a washed Paul Pierce?
Well, I think the thing here is that what was being described on this podcast was that in 2013, the whole concept was that Danny Ainge likes to take advantage of teams who overvalue players, which at the core of that opinion, I completely agree. As a GM, as a CEO, as a front office guy, that's your whole job in life is to take advantage of teams who value your players more than you value them. But the difference here, and this is the main thing that I want people to understand, the 2013 Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade that sent those guys to the Nets was very different because the Nets were thirsty to get those guys, right? But those guys didn't have really anything left to offer. Rudy Gobert still has a ton to offer a team and likely makes the Timberwolves a top contender right now, depending on how it pans out on the floor, obviously. The Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett deal was a salary dump that didn't make the Brooklyn Nets at that time a top contending team. So when you look at this, my problem with that opinion and really this whole idea that the Utah Jazz are rebuilding and they're not gonna rebuild this team around Don and they're just gonna ship him out is that Donovan's just entering his prime now. You had to move the Rudy money to build this team around Donovan Mitchell. And I don't understand why that's such a hard concept to grasp.
But I also think when you look at that 2013 Celtics team, that was a 500 basketball team.
Yeah.
A 500 basketball team that had aging superstars making a ton of money. That's not what the situation was here. You had one bad contract on this Jazz team. This is far from a 500 basketball team. You had to trade Rudy Gobert. It wasn't optional to trade Rudy Gobert. Just like in 2013, I would agree, it wasn't optional. You needed to trade.
It was
you
time.
needed to trade KG. You won your championship. Paul Pierce got his ring. It was time. But that doesn't mean that you're going to burn this thing to the ground, lose for 10 years, and then hope for the best with draft picks. Danny's not the guy that comes in to hang out of the playoffs. He's not the guy that comes in to hang out and just collect a paycheck. Danny Ainge is here to win. And I think what you're seeing and what has been repeatedly reported is that they're going to build around Donovan Mitchell. And I don't know why. And again, this is why I go back to the origins of this conversation. And I just say, why are we in such a hurry to force this guy out of town?
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question. Why is there so much vitriol for Donovan Mitchell? Now, does Donovan have improving to do? Absolutely. He's got to be a better defender. He's got to be a better mid-range player. He's got to be, frankly, a better locker room guy, a better leader. He's got to become the alpha male. He's got to lead that room. There's no doubt that Donovan Mitchell has to learn and grow and mature. But this idea that he's at his ceiling or at his peak is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's not 30 years old. See,
unlike Rudy Gobert.
That's the other thing. You traded the guy who's at his peak, at his ceiling, Rudy Gobert. You traded the guys that were out of the game in Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Jason Terry. Donovan Mitchell's not that guy. Donovan Mitchell's the prototypical NBA star. So that's why I asked this question of, does Donovan Mitchell get the respect that he deserves? And I guess the bigger question is Donovan Mitchell a superstar in this league? I personally think he's on the cusp of being a superstar.
Yeah.
He is. And again, the guy I compare him to all the time is Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
That's the guy that I compare Donovan Mitchell to on a regular basis.
Right.
I think they're very similar players, completely different bodies, completely different builds. I think Book is on another level offensively. I think Book has gotten much, much better the last 2-3 years defensively. But there's no reason that Donovan Mitchell cannot be as good as or as lethal as Devin Booker is.
Well, and I think the conversation is trajectory. That's what we're talking about here.
Yes.
We're not talking about right here today. Devin Booker is obviously ahead of Donovan Mitchell. But I think trajectory-wise, there's no reason that Donovan can't get to that level. And I think, the other thing that nobody talks about, and then we'll get to some comments here, but what no one talks about with Don is that he has been suffocated inside of the offensive system that he's had to play within, with the guys he's been playing with.
Yes.
You can't... How is it lost on people that the Jazz were such a piss-poor three-point shooting team to end this year? You know how many assists that Donovan Mitchell lost off his stat sheet? You know how many points were probably taken from him because the defense didn't have to respect Rudy Gobert on the offensive end? This is my point. Put guys next to Donovan Mitchell that other stars in the league have. What is Donovan Mitchell with Chris Paul next to him? What is Donovan Mitchell with Jaylen Brown next to him? What is Donovan Mitchell with Anthony Davis next to him? What is Donovan Mitchell with Dame next to him?
It's a huge question.
So that's my point.
It's a huge question.
Like Devin Booker has all this hot tools. Tatum has these tools. Trae Young now has these tools. What will Donovan Mitchell have?
I don't know. It is very interesting. JP Steve Shanahan.
Yeah.
My guy, what's up?
What's up, dude?
First one in this morning. Good to see you. Been a while. Quick question. Should Utah retire Rudy Gobert's jersey? I think that's a question for a different time. That's a question for a different time. And do you really think he's the greatest Jazz center of all time? I said that earlier this week. I maintain that. He is the greatest defensive player that's ever come through Salt Lake City. And with all due respect to the late, great Mark Eaton, yes, I believe that Rudy Gobert is the best center in the history of the Utah Jazz. The jersey retirement,
we'll talk about that
think
another
is different.
day. Yeah.
Tanner Plummer says, good morning, you Saudi stooges.
Wow, Saudi stooges.
Okay, how do I block him for the rest of the show?
Hey, guys.
Jake R., good morning to you. Wesley Iyer, good morning to you. Neville93, good morning to you. He also says, good morning, my Saudi stooge.
Why are we on the Saudi stooge train today?
I don't know.
Saudi stooge.
I don't know why we're on the Saudi stooge train.
Saudi stooge.
Bandwagon today. Tanner says Eaton was more of a complete player than Gobert. We can talk about it at some time. James Knight says, sup, you mofos.
What's up?
Greg Hawkins says, sup, my favorite BYU fan, Monty and Jake. See, he's playing on that narrative from yesterday.
Hey.
Playing on that narrative, Hawk. Good to see you. Cone Wiley says, hey, guys, I've been watching since the start of 2020 season, but was too lazy to sign into an account. Well, Cohen, good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're here, and we appreciate you watching the show.
Thank you for creating an account. Seriously, I know it's kind of a pain in the ass, but thank you.
And it makes a difference, you guys. And I want you all to know, because a lot of our favorites and a lot of our long times, a lot of the people that support this show are here. There are big changes coming to this show.
Yeah.
And you guys have done a phenomenal job of supporting us. And as much as things have changed already with the look and feel of this show, big changes are coming in the next.
Before football season, probably.
Before or right at football season, I think you're going to see some dramatic things happen on this show. So we couldn't do anything that we're doing now without you guys. So we really appreciate guys like Cohen Wiley opening a YouTube account. Appreciate you. Asler says, morning, right there. Even it's evening in my country. Asler, where are you? Don should be more motivated because the front office chose to build with him over Rudy. Yeah, no doubt about it.
And I think if you're Donovan Mitchell, again, this is speculation. I think it's always important to say this is my opinion. But I think if I'm Donovan Mitchell, with the lack of respect that I get, that's already a motivating factor. By the way, should it not be motivating to Donovan Mitchell that 2 seasons in a row, he got bounced from the playoffs on a last shot that wasn't in his hands? First by Boyan and by Mike Conley before that. Like, there are moments with this prior team where he wasn't prioritized. And I think that's changing as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Honestly, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Gene Streams Gamer says, love those fresh kicks you're posting on your IG, Boss Monty. Okay, there's the first boss drop of the day.
You got a boss on YouTube. How are you so good at it?
Hey guys. I don't know. I'm approaching 175 pairs of shoes, and I need to really slow down. Because I'm out of room, frankly. The shoe room is full. I am, and you'll see it on my Instagram if you follow me on Instagram, and you see my Instagram handle on the screen. I'm rocking a fresh pair of 2017 Air Max. Today, they're blue with black fade. Ooh,
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
they are nice. Spencer Morgan says unsettled. Yeah, I couldn't think of that word to save my life.
Yeah, unsettled and unnerved. Those
Yeah.
are the 2 words that were used. That's correct.
Doc J says Brian Windhorst abuses his platform the same way he abuses Subway. Oh, stop, Doc J. That's cool.
Messed up, bro.
Yeah, Tanner says, don't get me wrong, I love Don, but we need to be real about Don, and frankly, he hasn't played in an elite level lately. Well, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I think that's a very good point, Tanner. Hib, good morning. He says, new trendy thing from Jazz fans is to bash Spida because they have trust issues and are scared he wants out. I agree. I totally agree with that.
But this is my point. I don't disagree with that comment. I actually do agree with it too. Why are they scared he wants out? Have you heard anything from Donovan Mitchell? Seen anything from Donovan Mitchell? Don't Don't just jump to conclusions. Understand the guy is a human being, bro.
Yeah.
He has friends he hangs out with. Just because he had dinner with Brickley and Butler doesn't mean that he's going to go and play for Pat Riley. Just because he was in the Hamptons with Emmanuel Quickley doesn't mean that he's going to be a Knick. These guys are human beings. They have friends. There's a reason that Donovan Mitchell wants to take batting practice for the Mets. You think he's going to go to the big leagues now? No. He's enjoying his offseason, man. It was a long, stressful, heavy season for this team. And I think, when you're Donovan Mitchell and you're a gazillionaire at this point and you're playing basketball for a living, I'd be on private jets going to the Hamptons too, man. Like, I totally get it. I just don't think there's any need for this outlandish reaching that happens. I don't think that we have to do that. I think what we should be doing is saying, okay, what's the deal with the Ayton situation? Where's Kevin Durant going? How does this affect the Utah Jazz? Now, we know that Donovan's here. What's it going to look like when they add to this roster? Like, those are the things that we should be talking about, not Donovan Mitchell is going to be a Knick because he was in the Hamptons with Quickley. No,
and I would agree with that. And you know what? I think it's interesting that you have a lot of people that for one reason or another, I think that would like to see Donovan gone. And I just don't get that. Caleb, good morning to you. Don to the Heat, Mont. Send it in. Don to the Heat. All right, Caleb.
Can't do it, bro. Can't do it.
And there were rumors 3 weeks ago now that Donovan's preferred destination is not the Knicks, that it's the Miami Heat.
It's not fucking real.
We'll see.
Right?
We'll see. And you can see a lot of the rumors that don't make a lot of sense. Well, the Nets, there were a ton of rumors last week after the Kevin Durant thing came out that the Nets want to team up Donovan Mitchell and Ben Simmons. Oh, that's right. They're contractually unable to do that.
Oh.
Like they literally cannot, by rule in the NBA, CBA, you cannot have two rookie extensions on your roster at the same time.
That were not your guys.
Oh, we forgot about that.
That's right.
Okay. Jordan Becquerel. Hope I'm getting that right, Jordan. Tips us $5 today.
Thank you.
Donovan Mitchell isn't good enough to build your team around. Need to shop him to a top bidder.
See?
All right, well, let's talk about
that. Fair take. See, I can get down with that.
Let's talk about that. What is Donovan Mitchell lacking right now in his game? I think there's no question the weaknesses in Donovan Mitchell's game are two things significantly. Defense, he's got to show that he's a more wanting, willing, able defender, and he's got to be dominant in the mid-range game. Plain and simple. If he does that, there is no doubt you can win a championship with Donovan Mitchell. If he's not going to defend, he's no different than Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
He's no different than any of these other guys who are wonderful offensive players, but they won't defend.
Trae Young,
very good example. Donovan Mitchell has all the tools in his bag. We need to see the three ball. We need to see the mid-range domination, and we need to see his ability to drive and kick or drive and dunk. That's what I know that's there. We've seen the mid-range game. We need to see it on a regular basis now for Don to take that next step.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to see him play defense as well. And I think you will. I think Donovan Mitchell understands that you've got to do that. And in the comments, I'm curious what you guys think. Like, what is it that you want to see from Donovan? Greg Hawkins says, please join the Monty Show. Yeah, you should definitely join the Monty Show.
Yep, you should.
Subscribe to the show. Subscribe to the channel.
Please
give us a thumbs up.
Please like.
Appreciate the $5 tip from Greg Hawkins. Jake R. also with a $5 tip this morning says, international players hit their prime early. Americans usually hit their prime at 27, 28. Everyone needs to give Don a break and let him develop. I totally agree with that.
And I think that
totally agree with that.
The one thing you said there about his mid-range game that I totally agree with is like he does have a mid-range game, but there's a difference between having the game but then understanding how to apply your mid-range skills into any individual game to control it. Like if you think about, not that Don's ever going to have the mid-range game that Chris Paul has, or the mastery of it probably for a while. But if you look at Chris Paul, an aging player that still can dominate a game because he knows how to control pace.
Yes.
And that's one of those things that I think Donovan has to learn. It's a learned skill. You don't just roll out onto the floor and know how to do that. But the other thing, to do that, you got to have guys around you that the defense respects.
Yeah.
Which is now what he should have.
Doug says, do we still have Hassan Whiteside?
Hassan!
We do not.
Yeah.
He is a free agent. Although some people believe they will bring him back. We'll see. I have my doubts about that. Asgill says, when was the last time a non-Curry finals team was led by a player shorter than 6'5", though?
The Phoenix Suns?
Yeah. Certainly the Phoenix Suns with Chris Paul. I mean, size is this is a conversation about Donovan's size. And I think that what he lacks in size, he makes up for in length. Wow. That feels.
Wow, that was, man, that was.
Are we clear on that?
Well, I had
wow. Wow.
Wow. That got awkward.
Wow.
That got awkward.
Okay.
James Knight. In recent seasons, I've noticed when things aren't going well late in games, he develops an injury I like to call it a loser's limp. I don't know. I think that's an awfully serious allegation to make.
Yeah.
When you're accusing somebody of faking injuries, I mean, that's your opinion, certainly, and you're entitled to it, James. I would not co-sign that. I think Donovan Mitchell is a guy that battles. It is very frustrating to see him deal with what he dealt with against Memphis, with the ankle that ultimately undid them, in my opinion, against the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a different series if Don is a Hundo P. This year with the legs against Dallas.
But let's not forget that Rudy sat out against the Mavericks in what was one of the most important games of the regular season for them.
He did.
And was likely able to play by all reports.
And
so,
that's the infamous Don against the bench game as well. So, Mike wants to know why we constantly talk about Andy Larson. I don't know. Listen, it's not a constantly talk about Andy Larson. And everybody's sending me this podcast he was on yesterday. I got 4 people DMing me this podcast that Andy was on where he talks about, that he thinks Donovan wants to leave. And, that my guy T-Dot sends me this Jake Fisher podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't listen to Jake Fisher's podcast, frankly. I'm sure I'll listen to it. I don't care. But he apparently is talking about how Donovan is going to leave and they should trade him. And
what basis do you have?
I don't know. And the issue is, listen, again, I don't know Andy Larson personally, and I want to make that very clear. Andy's told people that I make it personal and that he hates me. And hey, that's cool, man. I'm talking about Andy Larson's work, period. You're the beat writer for what's supposed to be the largest paper in Utah, the Salt Lake Tribune. You got called out by Donovan Mitchell for making up what he was talking to the Dallas bench about. You made it up.
Straight up.
You straight up fabricated it. And then you come up with this wild conspiracy theory that frankly took off nationally about how he was leveraging the Jazz and that he was going to force them into hiring Johnny Bryant through Woj and his agent, and they're all represented at CA. It's just complete garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Guy,
it's disrespectful is what it is.
Well, no, what it is disrespectful to the profession.
Yeah.
Andy, it's disrespectful to the profession. You lack professionalism. You're a fanboy. You are not a journalist.
Yeah.
And when you're a journalist and you have integrity and standards, you don't make stuff up about Donovan Mitchell or anybody else. There's no difference between plagiarizing a story or fabricating a story. Those are equally damning. And you've done it not once, at least twice. At least twice. And no repercussions. No accountability. And it's frustrating as hell. I come from a town in Chicago where the media holds people to account. And again, I talked to a guy yesterday who asked a very salient point about the media in this town. Hey, well, with all the people that pretend to cover the Jazz, how come nobody's asked Donovan Mitchell these questions? How come I had a guy yesterday, a national national guy that I am very good friends with say to me, how come nobody asked Will Hardy about Rudy Gobert? And the explanation was, well, because they told us the trade's not official, we can't ask about Rudy Gobert. The hell you can't. You can't ask about, hey, what's your plan for Donovan Mitchell? You can't ask Danny Ainge or Ryan Smith, how's your relationship with Donovan Mitchell? How is it that you're a local media that doesn't talk to Donovan Mitchell at least a couple of times this summer? How is it that you're not talking to Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith on a regular basis? You've had multiple opportunities. Multiple opportunities. And listening to the gangbang with Will Hardy the other day, the one guy I give credit to is Eric Walden. Because Eric Walden actually reformulated a question. I believe it was Eric Walden who reformulated a question to try and ask about Rudy Gobert. I don't care. I don't fucking care if they tell you can't talk about it. I don't care.
Yeah, it's not up to them.
The Jazz don't run the newspaper, Andy. You do. The Jazz don't cover the Jazz, Andy. You do. Ask the question. Ask the question. That's why, I am passionate about media accountability of teams.
Or lack thereof.
And, well, yeah, but I am very passionate about the fact that the media, specifically in this town, doesn't hold anybody accountable. And it's a disservice to the team and to the fan base.
How was Donovan Mitchell in his exit presser not asked, hey, well, what are you moving forward? Where are you at with the organization? Like, is it your intention to stay and go through a retool, or is it your intention to explore all your options? How is that not asked?
I don't know. Like, I can think of so many situations where you just don't have the relationship.
The Quinn presser was the most glaring one to me. How is Quinn Snyder not asked, well, hey, how bad was it in the locker room? Like how bad did it get between Rudy and Don? You know, like any type of question like that, make them say, yeah, we're not gonna talk about that. Why the hell is Bill Belichick such a legend in pressers? Why do you think that is? Because he's not getting asked questions?
Look at major market media.
Yeah.
Look at New York City and the Knicks.
Yeah.
You have a guy that runs that team, Leon Rose, who has not met with the media in 6 months. So the media went after him. And what do you know? Leon Rose did a presser.
Wow.
Because the media in New York holds people to account. The media in Chicago, you look at, and this is the issue here in Salt Lake, honest to goodness, and not that we should probably be delving into this, but here's the issue in Salt Lake. The issue is that your media is owned by the church and the teams. So there is a narrative that is driven, and whatever the narrative is from the team and the church, that's what gets out.
Yep.
So when you have KSL owned by Bonneville, owned by the church, that owns now the Zone, 1280 The Zone, and leases it, manages it. They don't own it, but they manage it for Ryan Smith and the Jazz. So now the largest radio station is essentially run by the church, right? And Ryan Smith controls the narrative, and the church controls the narrative. Mm-hmm. So you have that sphere happening. You have ESPN 700 that's married up to the Utes, and you have no other media. You have no other media. How is the best Jazz coverage behind a paywall at The Athletic that I subscribe to because I don't subscribe to the Salt Lake Tribune anymore? The best coverage of the Jazz is The Athletic. Frankly.
Tony Jones.
Of the writers, Tony Jones at The Athletic, it's not close. It's not close. And that's why I say, and I know Andy Larson watches this show. I know he does, whether he wants to say it or not. So, Andy, I'll talk directly to you. Do you understand the position that you're in? Do you understand you're the beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune? Do you understand that when you make stuff up, or my guess is you have this fear of missing out on being relevant? I don't know. But when you do what you're doing and you refuse or you just don't have the chutzpah to ask the right question, it leaves a massive gap in the market. Andy, what you don't understand is that you are incredibly important to this town. And I don't think you understand that responsibility. I don't think you understand it. And what you're getting run circles around by the Athletic, Tony Jones. I mean, just running circles around you because you won't do the job. And I don't understand that. I don't understand are you scared? Are you insecure? I don't know. But again, the specific reason we talk about this so often is because the Jazz are calling us.
Pissed off.
They're calling us. We didn't go to the Jazz and say, hey, can we get a comment on this? 2 years ago, when we came back to Salt Lake City, going on 2 years ago now, they started calling us. That's how difficult it is. Like BYU is a great example.
Yeah.
I happen to have just met the right people at the right time when I worked here in 2014. 2013, 2014, I left October 1st of 2015. I maintained my relationships at BYU and was texting people and the guys I talked to 3 guys at BYU, and they all say the same thing. They all say the same thing. Oh, we totally understand what the Jazz are going through with the media. Like, it's at that level of frustration. Okay, I will stop. Let me get your comments in here. Let's see. Hula Billy says, shout out to Tony Jones. I have a lot of respect for Tony.
Yeah.
And if you watch this show, I think you know that. I read him on a daily basis. Dax Kiger, 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 says Tony Jones is the real deal. I would agree. Rec One says that's how Rudy revived so much support despite his limited performances. Yeah, the media here was a big supporter of Rudy Gobert's. And why is that? Because he talks to the media.
Yep.
He talks to the media on a regular basis.
It's easy.
Behind the scenes, away from practice, you can text Rudy. You can, on a regular basis, you can talk to him. And Donovan is a guy that's a little more private and a little more protective. He has got, because I think Donovan doesn't trust the media. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I understand that.
And that's a really important, I think that's a really important thing to touch on super quick. Trusting the media doesn't, like for players, typically doesn't mean they trust you because you're nice to them. That's not what trust is in the player-media relationship. Trust is, hey, I know you're going to ask me the questions that need to be asked.
Yes.
But they're proper questions. They're
Yes.
logical questions that make sense, that need to be asked, even if they're uncomfortable. Donovan Mitchell, hey, dude, where are you at with the organization right now? Are you Team Utah Jazz or are you Team go explore all your options? Why? That should have been asked already. There should have been a media outlet pushing to get that. And we have asked repeatedly to get an interview with Donovan Mitchell. So don't think we're not asking, because we are. But we don't have the Salt Lake Tribune label. We don't have ESPN 700 or 1280 The Zone. We don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you, that's what trust looks like. It's not about easy. It's about the right question.
I just don't think that when you're, and I've been in this position, when you're doing the job, I don't think you understand how important your job is. Honest to goodness. I don't think people like Andy Larson understand how integral he is to the accountability factor with the Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think, I'm guessing Andy cares. And again, I don't know Andy personally, but my guess is that Andy Larson doesn't understand his responsibility. That's a complete guess. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's see. Canes 1989. Does it make sense for Donovan Mitchell to stay with the Jazz if they already traded his teammate? Yeah, it does, because I think his teammate in Rudy Gobert was holding up a championship in Salt Lake.
Yep.
I do.
Yep.
Paul Edwards, thank you for holding them accountable. I appreciate it. Fans are scared of the future because trusted writers don't have good reasons to be excited. Tony Jones tells what the truth is in front of him. Yes, I would agree with that.
Agreed.
I would agree with that. Scott Howard says, I'm a Don supporter, but a lot of people of these constant rumors on him, I think he likes the attention. He has not convincingly squashed rumors. He has mainly stayed quiet about it for months because nobody asks him to. When have you seen Donovan Mitchell do an interview lately? And trust me when I say we have asked repeatedly through the club and through his agents. We have asked repeatedly for, hey, give me a 5-minute phone call. Hey, off the record. Hey, are you going to be here or there? Let's, I'll just be honest with you. Like I've asked, I've said, hey, you going to Las Vegas Summer League? Give me 5 minutes. Let's unrecorded, just you and me standing and talking. Hey, you know what? Can I get 5 minutes with you after the game? Hey, can I come and meet you after shoot around? Hey, and you get nothing. And I think Donovan prefers it that way. I think Donovan Mitchell does not trust the media. And frankly, I don't know why I would.
Yeah, can't say I blame him.
I don't know why I would. Rec One says, from your informed perspective, do you think Donovan is truly loving Utah and the Jazz? I think he appreciates the Jazz as a good sports organization. For the rest, I don't know. I think Donovan Mitchell likes living in Utah. I do. I actually think he likes playing for the Jazz. I think the biggest issue for Donovan, as it's been explained to me, is that he does not feel comfortable in his own skin sometimes talking about things like critical race theory. The conversation that came up about him wanting to meet with lawmakers did not go well.
Yeah.
Did not go well. Donovan cares about his community. Donovan is a guy that is if you follow Donovan on social, he's a passionate New Yorker. He enjoys going to Mets games. He enjoys being in Bridgeport. He enjoys New York. Mm-hmm. And I think if the community would embrace him, I think he would enjoy Salt Lake City a lot more.
Yeah.
I truly do.
Yeah.
I truly do. And, let's see. Rubni, Rubne, says, drop 38 in an upset series win against MVP Russ, rookie season. Yeah, he can easily be an alpha. Donovan Mitchell scoring the basketball is not the issue.
Yeah,
he
he's
has
a savage.
multiple 50-point games in the bubble. Like, I have no problem at all about that. I don't think that's a question at all.
Yeah.
He can absolutely do that. Let's see. Again, Rubney says, nah, that's cool, man. I just think he can reach higher peaks. I agree. Asler says, Don hates the media because of very nonsense rumors came on random sports reporters and writers. By the way, I'm in Clarkson County. Oh, you're in the Philippines. I'm assuming. Yeah, and there's a flag there. That's a Philippine flag. Yeah. That's cool. James Knight says, you don't seriously think Donovan Mitchell is going to provide running commentary on his intentions through the media, good or bad, do you? No. And Donovan Mitchell shouldn't say, oh, I hate Utah, I want out. Donovan Mitchell, and let's the what-if game. Let's pretend that Donovan Mitchell has asked for a trade. If he's asked for a trade, he's handled it perfectly because he hasn't gone through the media, he hasn't done it on social media, and it hasn't gotten out. So Donovan Mitchell is a private guy who likes being private, and I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. I covered a guy named Kobe who was very much the same way.
Yeah.
But the difference was when I asked Kobe to stand in a hallway at Staples Center and give me 5 minutes of his time, he did. And we had open, honest discussions about X, Y, or Z. Like Donovan Mitchell, the issue that I think Donovan has to kind of understand is that you need guys in the media.
Yes.
You need people who you can text and say, hey, man.
It's a leverage point.
Yeah. I need to, hey, hit me up real quick.
And you wouldn't do that through your agent and then go to Woj to do that.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. And that's the other part about that whole CAA conspiracy theory. That is the stupidity level on that. It's amazing.
That's just not how it works, dude.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Give us a thumbs up right now, please. It really helps the channel grow. One round left before we move on to Danny Ainge. Old media is just pulling out tactics to try and push down to a larger market. I think the largely there are people in the media here, and again, I'm not gonna name names because I don't know it to be fact. I think there are people in the media here who don't like Donovan Mitchell because he does not give them service.
Yeah.
He does not. Like Andy Larson, Donovan has called him out repeatedly on Twitter. Multiple times on Twitter. Mm-hmm. He has said that's like with the bench thing in Dallas. Donovan went after him on Twitter.
Yeah.
The idea that
it was kind of ugly.
The idea you have to go after him on Twitter is crazy to me. It's crazy to me. How do you not go to Donovan and ask him that before you tweet it? Not like, because you don't have a relationship. That to me is what that is. So, all right. I want to talk about Danny Ainge real quick because then we got to get to a couple other stories. Do you trust Danny Ainge to rebuild the Utah Jazz. I do. I think that Danny, the one thing that you can get out of that 2013 Celtics experience is, well, they won a championship and then he cut. And they rebuilt, and they haven't won a championship since, frankly. But Danny Ainge isn't the guy who just hangs out and hopes for 50-win seasons. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that understands good is the enemy of great, and that he wants to be great. This is Danny's last ride. I hope people understand that Danny Ainge isn't looking, down the road, because the road is, there is no road. This is it. This is Danny Ainge's last job. Mm-hmm. And I think he knows that. I think Ryan Smith knows that. And I think Danny Ainge wants to win. And I think he wants Utah and the Jazz and Utah Jazz fans to have a championship. So, yeah, I trust him implicitly.
Yeah, and I think he's got a proven track record. And I think that, again, the rebuild versus retool conversation and do you trust him to do that? Yeah, I unequivocally trust Danny Ainge to build a roster. That's what the guy does for a living, dude. That's what he always has done. He's very good at it. I think he's completely competent at doing what he's being asked to do. I think the conversation around is it a rebuild or retool is a fascinating one, but I don't personally, in my opinion, think that his actions suggest a rebuild. I just don't. I think that you had to move that Rudy money. It wasn't optional. This wasn't oh, well, money's great and everything's fine and we're not paying luxury tax, so let's keep Rudy. No, that's not the case.
No.
You were paying luxury tax. Money wasn't fine. The value was too much for what you weren't getting on the floor. You were not a championship contender. You got to move them.
Well, and think about it this way. Look what the Minnesota Timberwolves did. They invested $100 million a season in two centers. Two guys. Karl Anthony Towns, who they're going to bump down to power forward, and Rudy Gobert. I think in 2024, 2025, they will make $100 million combined.
Yeah.
My God. Are you kidding me?
It's a choice you made.
That's a ton of money. Now, if it doesn't work out, you can pretty easily trade Karl Anthony Towns. But I'm not building teams around centers. Not right now in this league. I'm not. And I absolutely trust Danny Ainge. I think Danny Ainge will bring a championship to Salt Lake City because he's acutely aware that you don't build championships around centers right now.
Yeah.
That may change. And I actually think the secular nature, the cyclical nature, of the NBA will bring big men back. But it's not right now.
Yeah, we're not in the Shaq, Tim Duncan era anymore.
No, we're not. No, we're not. So I think, and you look at this Rudy Gobert trade, Danny won the Rudy Gobert trade.
Yeah.
By a lot. And I think it was brilliant. And and the other thing you need to remember is we're not done seeing Danny Ainge make trades. Danny Ainge is going to improve this roster. That's the other thing, like the Mannix podcast.
Yeah.
So I know you listen to it as well.
Yeah.
The Mannix podcast, Chris Mannix basically said, yeah, but they're not good. They're not a playoff team. So they're going to trade Donovan Mitchell. Do you really think this is the finished product? Do you think when training camp starts, this is the roster they're going to training camp with?
No.
Get out of here. I think you have to understand that Danny's not done doing what he's going to do.
This is, okay, I'm going to say this again. The Kevin Durant situation has a massive impact on the Utah Jazz.
It has put the brakes on trades in the NBA.
Everything.
Until that situation gets clarified. And I think it gets clarified in the next 10 days. I think it's going to happen at Summer League because a ton of business gets done at Summer League.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people realize that.
Which makes sense. Everybody's there, scouting and developing and evaluating and doing their job. So people are going to have conversations in hallways outside of the locker room or at Mastro's in the treehouse. Things are going to get done. I wouldn't be surprised at all, man.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. I trust Danny. Spencer Morgan says, "Wait, what, Monty? So now it's a rebuild?" I think from this point where you're at right now forward, you're building or rebuilding, or you can call it as you like.
Well, let's define it, though, because to me, rebuild is you're tearing the whole thing down. For this to be a rebuild, you have to trade Donovan Mitchell. That's the standard to me.
If you're going to rip this team apart, you haven't done that yet. And
That's my point.
You would have done that already.
Yeah.
1, 2, you're going to rebuild, build, whatever. You're going to build back better. Joe Biden's now the Never mind. Anyway, my
Sleepy
point
Danny.
is you're going to build back better than what you had.
Yeah.
I trust. Maybe that's the way we should say it. Wait, hang on. Maybe that's what we should say.
Okay, we're gonna edit some graphics here.
Let's
can I get some branding on the screen, please?
Let's see. Let's go.
Yep.
Build
Okay, we're entering launch codes.
Better for. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
How about that? Let's
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
How about there you go.
Hey.
Wait. What? What?
Bro, come on, man. You got to execute
Hang
here,
on.
bro.
Danny Ainge to build. Okay.
Dude, I
Save.
trust Danny Ainge. I don't trust you to make graphics
There
right
you
now,
go.
bro.
Do you trust Danny Ainge to build back better for the Utah Jazz? Are you happy now, Spence? Damn it, Spencer. It's not.
But I want to be really clear. This is not a rebuild, man. A rebuild, to me, with their current situation, would require tearing the whole thing down. Like going after the number 1 overall pick, trading Donovan Mitchell away. That would be a rebuild. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Gabe says, I, for one, am glad Utah sports media is bad at what they do. More subscribers for the Monty Show. Appreciate that, Gabe. Eventually, we're going to mail your PS5 out.
Maybe.
Dax Kiger says, Donovan might be best having social media conversations rather than face-to-face. Maybe he is.
It doesn't excuse the fact that he hasn't done an interview.
Yeah.
And I'm not indicting Donovan. I'm saying that he hasn't been given a chance by somebody to set the record straight.
I think he doesn't trust a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that when you burn the bridge with Donovan Mitchell, there's no rebuilding.
Yeah, there's no back.
Building back better with Donovan Mitchell on the bridge. There really isn't. Rec 1, I think you couldn't expect anyone better for this job than Danny Ainge. Totally agree with that. Neville93 says, yes, I trust that old man. Okay. Jake R says, anybody else realize that the Jazz haven't introduced any of the acquired T-Wolves players? Well, we talked about this in our vaunted pre-show half-asleep meeting last night. We were actually talking about the fact of why haven't they even on social media? Why haven't they even had a presser?
Because there's another move coming. Breaking news.
They're going to flip. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. According to national sources, they're going to release Patrick Beverley.
Right. Another ridiculous concept, dude.
I think they're going to flip Pat Bev and some of those picks. I know for a fact, again, yesterday I was told by Jazz sources that they absolutely are still engaged with the Phoenix Suns. I mean, I think there's a couple other teams that are making serious pushes.
Yeah.
For DeAndre Ayton, without question. I'm not confident enough and haven't been able to confirm enough to name those teams, but I can tell you right now that there are other teams that are pushing the Phoenix Suns for DeAndre Ayton. And I think if you are the Brooklyn Nets, you better make that Kyrie trade sooner than later. Mm-hmm. And if I'm Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, I'm taking a loss on Kyrie because I need to move on.
Yeah.
And if I can get Russell Westbrook and either buy him out or have him on an expiring deal, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
By the way, is anybody surprised that James Harden still is not a member of the Philadelphia 76ers?
Waiting for moves to happen.
There are a lot of moves out there. And I will say this about DeAndre Ayton. I don't know that there's an appetite in this league anymore, from what I've been told, to give him a max deal. I think there are teams competing to trade for DeAndre Ayton. I am not convinced that there are teams out there competing to give him a max deal. Those are two very different scenarios.
Yes, they are.
DeAndre Ayton right now is a restricted free agent with the Phoenix Suns. And much to Jake R's point, people are not announcing deals they've made because I think they're not done making deals. DeAndre Ayton wants a max extension. And I think you're going to have a hard time getting that. And I also think that DeAndre Ayton, before he wants a trade, wants to be able to negotiate an extension with the team he's going to. And I think the pool of DeAndre Ayton max contract teams is very small, if there's even any.
Yeah.
Because Danny Ainge, in my opinion, is not going to give DeAndre Ayton a max extension. He's not. And I think DeAndre has a lot of proving to do. So, you know what, Jake? I think that's a very good question.
Yeah.
That is a very, very good question. Nick says, Danny, yes, don't know about Ryan yet. Indicators so far are questionable. I don't know what restrictions Ainge has. Well, from what Jazz sources have told me, Danny Ainge is doing what Danny Ainge wants to do.
And Ryan pretty much has said that.
And Danny, when he wants to trade Rudy Gobert, they have a conversation about it. And as I was told by Utah Jazz sources, Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith agreed back in the fall that you needed to move Rudy Gobert's contract if you were going to win. And then when Danny took the job, from what I understand, there was another conversation confirming that he would be able to do that. And Danny was not able to get that done. It was close at the trade deadline, but they weren't able to get it done at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And Danny, at the end of the season, on their end of season meetings, Danny and Rudy Gobert had that conversation where Rudy said, I want to be here. I love Salt Lake, but if there's another situation that you can move me on to, let's explore that. Danny got the deal done. And by the way, I probably undersold the lead. The Bulls and the Jazz, according to league sources, had a deal done. They had a deal in principle for Patrick Williams, for Nikola Vucevic, for Kobe White, and 3 future first-round picks. And then the Kevin Durant situation happened, and the Bulls pulled out. The Bulls said, no, we're going to wait.
Yeah.
And then Danny went back to Minnesota, who had been talking, made the Rudy Gobert deal, went to Ryan Smith and said, hey, I have this deal. And Ryan Smith was like, let's do it.
It's a better deal.
And they kicked the crap out of Minnesota, and they kicked the crap out of the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls should have made that trade.
Yep.
And thankfully they did not, because Danny was able to get a far, far better deal. Now, Minnesota, in my opinion, is a championship contender. They will be in the Western Conference Finals. Everybody stays healthy. And I still, by the way, maintain they're going to trade D'Angelo Russell. I still think that happens.
D'Lo.
But I think they're a championship caliber team now. So, Nick, it's interesting that you talk about you don't know what Danny's restrictions are.
Well, and it should be said, Ryan has said repeatedly in press conferences that he's given the keys to Danny.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he said that blatantly.
Dax Kiger says Danny will make 3 key trades in the next 12 months that'll bring the Jazz to a contending level. It won't be before this season. He will make another significant trade before the season.
Yeah.
He will. My guess is you're going to see a significant deal. You're going to see this roster transformed significantly before the season starts.
Once the Kevin Durant thing happens, dominoes will fall.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. BB says he's an amazing deal maker. Big Dog O-Town, what's up? I must have pissed you off. What do you mean?
What do you mean, bro?
What are you talking about? Mark Barrington, people think they'll release Pat Bev just because of previous trades like Derrick Rose and immediately releasing him. I don't know where this buyout of Patrick Beverley or release of Patrick Beverley thing is coming from. Danny Ainge is one thing, and that is savvy, which means he's not wasteful.
Yeah.
He does not just give away assets.
Bev has value, bro.
A couple of more. Craig's the Bob says, finally, I'm up during a live stream. Craig, good to see you, my man. Gabe Levely says, Ayton about to sign an offer sheet with Indiana and blow up every KD to Phoenix scenario. Oh, that would be a nutbuster.
That'd be rough, bro. And
would be
I'm
brutal.
not. I don't think that we can deny that that's a possibility, you know. And I think that this is sort of the art of Danny Aingeing, if you will. You know, I mean, part of what you do for a living is getting deals done before, you know, Ayton to Indiana happens. You know, getting on the phone and having that conversation. It's like what you just described with the Bulls and the Utah Jazz. Like, the Bulls didn't pull that trigger, and now they don't have that deal. And that's what I think the art of going to Summer League, talking to guys, and getting things done is. And that's why I say it's not just do you trust Danny Ainge to build a contender. It's do you trust Danny Ainge to get the deals done now that would make you a contender now.
Steve Clayson
Yeah.
gives us a $20 tip
Thank you, Steve.
and says, love the show. Go Cougs. Appreciate you very much.
Steve, thank you, bro.
Thank you, Steve. That makes a big difference for us. If you'd like to leave us a tip, you can do so at the bottom of the screen there. Jeremy Bolton. Jeremy didn't leave us a tip. He's got I think Jeremy has more kids than Elon.
Well,
Jeremy says good morning. That was probably a cheap shot, Jeremy. They did buy you a Caruso jersey.
Hey, guys.
Jeremy, hi, man. How are you? Good to see you.
welcome to the
this morning.
show.
Thanks for getting out of bed. Spencer Morgan says, if that Bulls deal really was that close and it was the Bulls that pulled out before the Jazz went to Minnesota, that is the most solid indication to me that Jazz are in a retool posture versus rebuild.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, my sources usually are not wrong. I don't generally report things. If you look at our track record, especially the last 2 years,
Again, it's all on YouTube.
we haven't missed much. And is it was explained to me the Bulls and the Jazz had been battling back and forth over Pat Williams for a long time. So that is significant. Again, appreciate y'all being here. Again, Steve Clayson, thank you so much. That's a huge deal for us. Look forward to talking BYU with you. Caleb, last one on this says, my friend who is a Celtics fan says Danny Ainge loves picks. I'm happy with having him in Utah. That Gobert trade was fruitful. Yes, it was.
Well, I think the reason you love picks is because it brings you leverage. I mean, you having the draft capital is a cherry on top of any deal, and that's why the Minnesota deal was so good. It's not even really about the players, even though I really like Malik Beasley, I really like Jared Vanderbilt, and I really like the value you can get for flipping Pat Bev. Like, I like what he got there, but the picks are what really allow you to get involved as a third team in a Kevin Durant situation, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's one of those things where you have to understand what wins in this league right now. And if you look at all the deals that have gotten done, they've all been picks deals. So I think that's a really important matter of discernment, point of discernment. I think that's huge. Real quick, a couple of things. Jake, listen, man,
Yeah.
I have great affection for you, right? Like,
But why are you lying? I mean, that's not true.
It's a tough morning for Jake.
It is. It really is. It's rough.
I mean, I don't know, and maybe you guys just cuddled. Maybe you guys hugged it out. How's Chet this morning after?
He's one of the worst players ever drafted. I mean, I don't know what they were looking at. This guy's 7 feet tall in a wiry frame. I mean, I just don't know how dude was number 2 overall. I mean, he clearly sucks.
Oh man, you know.
I'm kidding. I'm a huge Chet Holmgren fan. No, I mean, you knew what you were getting into. I'll say that. You knew what you were getting into. And by the way, I have to say I was incredibly entertained watching Kenny Lofton Jr. go into full-on, I'm going to beat your ass under the basket mode.
But that's your boy.
It is my boy.
Kevin,
Buddy's got to lift some weights.
Let me single up on this because there's two guys in the shot.
Can we get
the sellout Kevin Durant?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Ring Chaser? I like your face. Yeah.
But then what about over your other shoulder?
Oh yeah, the newest Carolina Panther for almost a rack of football, right here. You see that? Yeah, bro. I mean, I just got sellout after sellout over here, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah, dude.
That is.
Yeah. You know,
you had a very, very, very difficult day. Yesterday, man. You know, like it is. You know.
Honest to God.
What did you think of? What did you think of Chet Holmgren last night?
I think that, you know, obviously, it doesn't take a physicist to understand that Chet Holmgren.
I'm sorry, did you say a physicist?
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that Chet Holmgren might want to put on some muscle onto that frame. He's not going to be able to bang with the guys like Kenny Lofton Jr. I mean, that's just not. He's not going to be able to defend that. But what troubled me a bit more, I have to be honest, is not even that he struggled to defend what Kenny was doing, but that there was no bounce back on the offensive end. That's what bothered me. Like, I understand, like, even the greats, even Michael, Kobe, even Kevin, like, all these guys go through adversity on the defensive end. It happens to the best of them. But the conversation isn't, hey, you're getting your ass beat on the defensive end.
Right.
The conversation is, what are you going to do on the offensive end to counteract that and prove a point? That was my issue. Chet looked tired. He looked uninterested. He
looked tired, bro.
Yeah, like
he looked tired.
There was no bounce back, and that's an intangible. Not that I'm concerned about it. It is Summer League.
Oh, wait, that's right. Caleb was at the game last night.
Oh, were you?
Caleb said Lofton out here doing work for Memphis.
What did you think? What did you see with Chet in like commercial breaks?
You know what I saw at Chet? I saw Lofton's ass.
Just so you can go to Pound Town.
That is a big, thick dude.
Yeah, dude.
But did you see that step back three? He's a lefty. Did you see that step back three?
He can shoot it, and that's what I'm saying. He is an underdog. He is before he got to Summer League and was drafted. I've been saying this is Zach Randolph 2.0. And this guy can shoot the three. He's got the right mentality. He wants to end you, and that's what I like about him.
Giggity says Chet needs to be careful of someone opening a door in the arena. The draft might blow him off the court. Chet weighs like 30 pounds.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I it's a problem, you know. And I think, and we talked about this on draft day. The long-term viability of that body and staying healthy is going to be decided By him, seriously, by
So,
him strength training, man.
We're up at Harmon's last night in the Mountain View Village,
Right.
like off of Mountain View corridor.
Right.
And there's a lady in produce who is like, those awkwardly thin human beings?
Yes.
And I'm like, damn,
Like
that's
Chet Holmgren?
That's Chet Holmgren.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife's like, who's Chet Holmgren?